So, hey, what's going on?
Hey, how are you?
This is Sunny. I really hate intros, and we're going to go through the good stuff really quickly. But first of all, you have something. Explain your project. The auto. I can't pronounce it again. I'm just gonna let you explain what you do.
Okay.
And how you got into it. Just be you.
Okay, so my whole project started out back in November 2017 as an autoethnography. And I was looking not to write a memoir about my life and experiences as a transracial adoptee adopted into a white family in a very racist part of New Jersey. We do have pockets of those, so I will talk about that. And that's what it grew from. When I realized that the amount of work I was doing and the amount of independent research I was doing was exceptional, I wanted to make sure that the idea that I had was actually viable. So to do that, and actually before that, I found out that if you're ever going to be considered for a mainstream publication with this type of work, you have to have an audience.
So you were aiming for a book. You were aiming for a book.
I was aiming for a book.
That's what started all this.
That's what started all of it.
Okay.
And when I realized, I need an audience, I said, okay, so let me get on social media and see what's going on. So I have a background in digital marketing and analytics, so I was able to kind of do the investigative work into what the adoption community is currently talking about when I started this project, because I didn't want to be reiterating a lot of things that were already being done. And when I started, it seemed like a lot of people were saying the same thing, and I said, if I'm going to do a marketable book, I can't be doing that.
What's already been said? Like, what's out there already?
One, the struggle, then the triumph type of stories, the struggle and then the struggle type of stories. And that wasn't what I was going for. I didn't think that a memoir was going to be something that was going to achieve my goal, which at the time was simply just to tell a story, to make a change, and I didn't know 100% what that was yet. When I got involved and I started writing blog posts, I didn't realize that there was an audience for this. I knew through a couple of months of work that nobody in the general public cared about adoption. And I hate to say that, but it's more one of those topics where you have your assumptions, and I'm not going to try to change them, or I'm not going to be changing them, just one person telling my story. So I thought, what angle do I have that could really make this compelling for the general public to understand what these, at the time I wasn't aware of how deep the systematic issues with adoption were, but I said, how do I even make people care? What's the angle? So one thing I thought was race. I am a transracial adoptee. Most people are not going to be impacted by adoption, but everybody's going to be impacted by race. So from that's when I kind of got in on the race, adoption, and the American family, because as the project grew and the research grew, I said, you know what, this can start a dialogue about how we think of race and family in the United States in general. So that way you broaden the scope of it from just being adoption while still
Which is too broad.
Which is too broad. And again, we are, stuck with the either happy narrative of adoption or the tragic one, and I think
there's a gray area.
There's a serious gray area that isn't being examined.
You're that gray area.
Yes, thank you. Yes, because in doing this, I realized that so many adoptees who have had unfortunate experiences, by speaking out about them, they are automatically labeled as negative and ungrateful.
It's so dramatic that way.
It is, and but it's also more comforting to the general public to think of people that way without challenging our own beliefs. So I want to challenge those beliefs, by making it, again, something that everyone can consider, even if you're not personally affected.
That's right. And your blog is www.sunnyjreed.blog, which is a very great read. I love the way you write. It's nice and short, but to the point. That's really hard for a writer. You try to say the most impactful things with the least amount of words possible. I told you that once, and I like your blog. It's not. It doesn't. I hate long-winded blogs. Just get to the point. Just make it. Yeah, make it quotable. You do a good job on that. So check it out, everybody. So let's get to your experiences. I know this is like a very stereotypical thing to talk about, like growing up adopted, but I will tell you that as an Asian American, the adopted community is really the fourth lost, forgotten community. We have what we call the second generation Asian Americans, and then we have the immigrants, which we call it fresh off the boat, the FOBs, right? And then we have the Hapas, the mixed race. These are the three we always talk about, but we forget the fourth one, which is the adoptees. And it's because like it's really hard to tell. There's no outer, like I guess I can look at you outside, I can't tell you're an adoptee unless you tell me.
Right.
You know, so how does it feel? I mean, how old were you when you first started growing up to get adopted? Like, do you have memories?
I was a couple months old.
So you were a baby. Like,
yeah.
This wasn't like some 4-year-old thing where you just like remember.
No. And initially.
You're Korean, right?
I'm Korean,
Okay.
Initially, I didn't believe there were memories until the work that I've been doing shows that even though a child can't have those physical, the recall, there are other ways that things imprint on children, and especially adoptees who have been traumatized and separated from their parents, which is a hot topic right now in general. That also needs attention because adoptees experience that almost a similar type of trauma. And so no, I don't have memories of that, but I'm finding that as I became a mother, my own son crying for me to come into the room for him made me think of those cries that I had and the other children had, and somebody didn't come, and it was a different face. So these are not necessarily tangible memories, but they are feelings and things that I think imprint on you at a very young age, and it affects you, and you might not know it right away. So in terms of memories, I have those feelings and that survival instinct. But yeah.
Wow. You didn't grow around Asians growing up, right?
Nope, and that's something,
Yeah.
that we can talk about that.
Yeah. But I do remember, like, you posted on your Twitter, there was a photo of you and your aunt.
You saw that one with
that was a very popular, pictures tell 1,000 words, and what was that all about?
The picture that you're referring to is the.
And I'll show it.
Okay, yeah.
With your permission.
No, that's totally fine. I want people to see it.
You put it on your Twitter.
No.
It's okay.
I want people to see this. So, one of the reasons I did this is because, we have an idea of transracial adoption or at least we previously did, and I think some people still believe this, that love can conquer anything. Especially when I was adopted, it was that colorblind assimilation approach to transracial adoption, and we all know what colorblindness got us for that generation. So what I have posted to show that when I'm trying to make the point that yes, my family was racist, a lot of people say that I wanted to show that how much photographic evidence I had of it. Were
you aware of that?
Okay,
or you thought that was okay?
So the idea was, the story behind this photo that you're talking about was that my father, who's my adoptive father, white, that his sister looked like me when she did the Oriental eyes. So the joke became when I would go see my aunt, go do the Oriental eyes. Yeah. So there is a picture of my white aunt and me at Christmas sitting on her steps. I remember this. Pulling the eyes down, and that ended up in my baby book. And so.
You didn't know? Like you didn't think that was okay, right? Like,
I use that to answer that question. I use that to illustrate how impressionable children are. Yes, and how normalized. I didn't realize it. Something felt off, but what happened was I ended up going to school, and then that same gesture started being used against me. And
that's when you realized you were Asian.
That's when I realized that this is not okay. And so. With that existing attitude from my parents, it was going to make it. And of course, I couldn't articulate this at the time. I was a kid, but that attitude really set the tone for how my future, the racist encounters and their support was going to go.
Do you ever tell your parents hey, Mom, these kids made fun of me? What do they say?
All the time. Some of the things that I. So there's general ignorance, which I find forgivable because we cannot live the same way. She was a blonde-haired, blue-eyed woman who, you know,
Who can't relate to you.
no. And I always say that when I come home and complain about being called names, or one time I was running for student council in middle school, and somebody wrote "chink" on my poster. And when I went to the affirmative action officer, she's the same person who told me when somebody tried to light my jacket on fire when I was wearing it, that don't you think that person just needs a friend? So when I'd go home and tell my mom about these stories, the response would be, oh, well, you know, everybody gets made fun of something. I had long legs and I got called olive oil legs because of that. So, and then, you know, so...
Racism doesn't exist. More or less.
We weren't allowed, I was never allowed to talk about race in my house. My father, no, are you kidding me? Racism,
I talk about race all the time in my house.
Racism was a word that minorities cried in order to get what they wanted. And so it always felt wrong to me. And I am not a passive person. I am not going to take it. And they were a family who lived a very different life than what I would have wanted for myself. All three of them were very popular in high school. They was homecoming kings and prom, things like that. I had no interest in that. So when these things started happening and I drew farther and farther into myself, because obviously, I mean, there was, where I grew up, the demographic was very unfriendly toward anybody of color. And so when I grew up, we couldn't talk about it. And if I did, then again, racism would be a bad word. So we were never allowed to talk about it.
This leads me on a very natural question. If they knew that people of color weren't accepted in your neighborhood, why did they bring you in there?
I know, and you know what?
Knowing you would deal with that, or they didn't think about it?
No, and one of the things in my early days that I still want to pursue, and I do find this out through current transracial adoptive parents, is what one was the previous generation's marketing materials, which I kind of found out, and two, why are parents who clearly have these demographics and this kind of value system still slipping through the cracks? So, you know, there's a lot wrapped up in that. You know, anyone will tell you white saviorism, Christianity, and
those are true. But they're not.
They're not. See, and this is why I don't like to give any. I don't like to say any hard answers, because they're true for some and not true for all. And to paint everybody with that same brush isn't fair.
Can't read everybody's heart.
No, and you know, I think people genuinely want to do good, but I think what happens is people who think that they could go through life and ignoring the color issue or the race issue. They end up very disappointed in their child, and we see this happening because the person doesn't grow up into a white person. So,
which is kind of their plan for you.
Which I feel like for in many cases, and I think adoptees, you know, will understand that you end up with identity issues and racial, very, very. It can be very subtle too, very subtle identity issues. You're raised with a dominant racial group in society. So even if you were raised in a diverse community, you cannot argue the importance of the home system and that support system at home.
Something just occurred to me, just like talking to you right now. Like, I feel like because people assume that adoptees get less of the racist hit.
Interesting.
Because you're in, like, supposedly you're in it with the white society. You're leveled up.
Right.
But just talking to you, I feel like I noticed something. When you deal with problems, you have no one to go to, and I do.
Yeah.
Like, I can go to my community anytime. Like, hey, that white person made fun of me. Chinese people, hold me back. But you don't have that, which I think you have it worse than I do in many ways.